on this episode of the WildFed podcast.
I don't believe in yucking on someone's yum. However, I was sick and tired of seeing wild foods mishandled on so many different shows. I wanted to show people how easy it is to have what would cost $120 to eat in a restaurant.
There were tremendous changes both in food culture in the United States, also in food TV. The general food IQ of the average American must have come up dramatically in the time that you've been doing this.
At no point in human history has any culture been so romantically food obsessed as Americans are at this point in time. It's amazing.
Social issues have been sort of foundational to your work. Obviously, food has been the vehicle through which you've communicated about a lot of these types of issues.
We can break bread together and solve a problem. We need longer tables. We don't need taller walls. And at that point, we can start to solve some of our issues. And the best way to do it is by looking at things through food.
Episode 169 of the WildFed podcast, Breaking Bread Together with Andrew Zimmern, is brought to you by Surthrival. Right now, it's Surthrival's annual colostrum sale. This is our biggest sales event of the year and our clients' most favorite. All colostrum products are 20% off until March 15th with the coupon code OPTIMIZE. I use a third of a cup of colostrum daily in my blended drinks, and I have for years. I consider it one of the most sophisticated nutritional supplements in existence for its ability to improve the immune system, restore the lining of the gut, improve lean muscle mass, repair tissue, and so much more. It's a favorite amongst athletes, bodybuilders, longevity experts, and for anyone trying to repair their body from the inside out. If you're a serious user or you're ready to start using it seriously, I highly recommend the 1 kilo or even better, the 2 kilo container. I call that 2 kilo container the Darth Vader helmet, since it comes in a huge black tub that reminds me of Mr. Vader's helmet. Also, give a try to our naturally flavored colostrum powders as well. Chocolate with real cacao, vanilla with real vanilla bean extract, and strawberry with real strawberry juice. These aren't the fake flavors you're so used to in most supplements today. Go to surthrival.com to see the entire lineup of health promoting supplements and use the coupon code OPTIMIZE for 20% off all colostrum products. Surthrival. Why just survive when you can thrive? Do you need an antidote to the metaverse? We just launched our newest t-shirt design over at wild-fed.com. It features our antidote to the metaverse tagline on the chest, a WildFed badge on the sleeve, and 2 tarot-style cards juxtaposed on the back, one modeled on the tarot card known as the Fool, who's wearing an Oculus and absent-mindedly walking off the roof of a building with a bag of fast food in one hand and a cell phone in the other. Next to it is a card based on the Magician, who's juggling 4 implements: a fishing rod, a rifle, a trap, and a foraging basket. It represents our belief that a life that includes the outdoors inoculates you against believing that an artificial experience of life could ever replace a natural one. You see, for us, being wild-fed, hunting, fishing, and foraging is about a lot more than just getting our groceries. It's an antidote to the metaverse, an act of rebellion against the transhuman agenda that is leading humanity to abandon the natural world in favor of wearing screens over their eyes to live in a virtual one. We choose the natural over the artificial. We choose an antidote to the metaverse. We choose to be fed by the wild. Check out our new shirt at wild-fed.com. I'm Daniel Vitalis, and you're listening to the WildFed podcast, a show about reconnecting with nature through hunting, fishing, foraging, and food. WildFed. Food is all around you. My guest today is Andrew Zimmern, who you may know from the long-running cable TV series Bizarre Foods, or most recently on Outdoor Channel, Andrew Zimmern's Wild Game Kitchen, which you can watch for free on outdoorchannel.com. I've been a fan of Andrew's shows for a lot of years. In fact, they were some of my early inspiration for creating the WildFed TV show. Aside from his television work, I didn't know much about Andrew, and this was my first time talking to him. Like me, he wants to reframe the way we handle and cook wild foods. But I quickly realized that his work, though centered around food, is for him a lot deeper. In fact, it's inseparable from his perspectives on politics and sociology. Though we have some differing opinions about all of this, he, like me, describes what he does as a Trojan horse. So while we might not share the same perspectives on current events or what constitutes the existential threats to our species, I certainly relate to having a deeper why for what we do. One thing we definitely agree on is the way that our food IQ here in America has grown in recent years. That food can bring disparate parties together, and that we can, regardless of how we view the world, break bread together. In fact, we should. And that's an important and timely message. Now, before we get started with today's interview, I've got some really big news to share. If you've been following closely, you probably deduced it yourself, but we're going to be concluding the WildFed podcast in the coming weeks. We're going to record a handful more episodes, and those will continue to roll out on the same schedule, after which we'll leave the entire archive up and available for you to continue to listen to and revisit. The plan is to take some downtime to focus on the TV show, and then at some point soon launch a new podcast that will be more broadly focused on the many topics I'm interested in. Those will continue to include some of the things we talk about here, but it will open up to more of my interests as well, like current events, health, wellness, fitness, philosophy, personal development, love, longevity, and more. So I hope you'll stick with us till the end, as we still have several great shows coming your way, including one next week with renowned hunter Donnie Vincent, whose opinions differ wildly from those of today's guest in ways that I promise will be quite a contrast to today's episode. So while I'll be back next week, I just want to extend my thanks for the incredible support and loyal listenership. It's been an incredible experience to not just produce this show, but to be on this learning journey with you. I hope you'll stay on our mailing list and continue to follow our social media accounts so you'll know when we launch the next show. And in the meantime, keep tuning in to WildFed Season 3 on the Outdoor Channel, Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. East. Andrew Zimmern, welcome to the show.
Hey there. Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Yeah, man. I got to tell you, I have been a fan for a long time. When I was
nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I had a hand-burned DVD of an episode of Bizarre Foods that you made up in Maine. And I don't even know where I got it. You know, it was like back when people used to burn CDs and make that kind of. Anyway, I had this DVD, and little did I know I would later on go on to have a food TV show. But there was you cooking. You know, it's so weird how things work out, because you worked with a woman, Kate Gooding, to do a beaver recipe. I lived in a completely different part of Maine. Now she's a neighbor of mine. It's so strange. And I've since gone on to work with her. But yeah, I saw you do that, and I saw you eating June bugs, and that had a tremendous influence on the course of my career. So I just want to say thank you for your awesome work.
You're very welcome. Obviously, one of my favorite episodes of television I've ever made, not just Bizarre Foods, because I got to have my father and my son in the same episode, which was, even though Noah was only like 3 or something like that, there's a moment where I'm carrying him around and I'm eating chocolate covered June bugs. My kid is, my dad is. And, when you sit down and you say to yourself, what are your, highlights? I mean, that was a big one. And also a fan favorite, I think, for many reasons, but I'm not gonna lie. I think the biggest reason was absolutely, deadpan, no intent to be sexualizing it at all. We're eating the beaver stew, and Kate's asking me if I like her beaver, and I said, your beaver is delicious. And her husband is off camera, and all that's going through my mind after like 5 seconds, it just hits me what's going on. And I'm trying to get out of the situation, which caused some, word kerfuffles, and everybody seems to find that to be one of their top 5 all-time Bizarre Foods moments, which I'm not going to lie, one of mine as well. It was just hysterical.
It's hilarious. We did an episode of WildFed where we trapped beaver and we had a beaver meal, and you just can't get around it. Even when you're tired of it, days into production, you're like, okay, these jokes, but oh man, there's something juicy about it.
It's stupid. It's juvenile. It's like, it's like we're back in the, 5th grade, gym class. And yet that's that it is what it is. So yeah, pretty darn amusing, and a famous episode of the show. Although in a plug for eating that type of animal, absolutely delicious.
It's
Absolutely
incredible, right?
delicious. Yeah.
Incredible. I
It
know.
carries a bunch of like a lot of wild meats. You have to make sure you don't get sick from it. And sometimes they carry bacteria or other viral illnesses that heat cannot cure. So you do run the risk of something like giardia from most famously from beaver. But having eaten it 2 or 3 times, it's never happened to me. And it seems like everybody on that show that's gone like 12 seasons alone, who eats beaver gets sick and has to tap out. So I'm like, I wonder what's going on with the beaver
On
that
your
they're
show?
trapping. No, on their show called Alone.
Right.
Have you seen that show?
Yeah. They seem to get sick from everything on that show. I mean, they're pretty depleted though in that, right? That's a start. I call that show the Hunger Games. It's like
Yeah,
you're getting pretty worn down. So
that's really what it's become. I would love to see them put people. I guess the problem with the production issue on that show for the people who are making it, not the participants, is you need people to tap out. You need to have a winner. The faster, every day of production costs money, right?
Yeah.
So if you put them in a place where there was more access to food, you have lots of people lasting lots of days, and these people all have real survival skills, right?
Yeah, I mean, these are right.
So then they're there for 2 years while people are like, smoking trout and drying game and all the rest of that. So and so I mean, it really is a matter of luck. I happen to love that show, but it really is sort of a matter of luck. Are you able to get the shelter up, and do you get enough meat early enough that it allows you to keep going? And you have to do both at the same time.
And that's assuming you can handle the mental game, which seems to be the biggest part of it, right? Yeah, I know. You know what? I completely agree with you, and I love the show too. I'm a huge fan of the show. I do sort of sometimes lament and wish for a show that was a little bit more like, and I know this wouldn't make for great TV, but it's just, for me personally, being interested in wild foods and the wild foods lifestyle, it's like I'd love to see somebody have a season in a food rich river floodplain or something, where they could put food up,
and they can't.
Yeah,
I mean, it took me a couple seasons, of watching it, to say, okay, they're for sure putting them in places where there's not access to a lot of food, and winter's coming fast, and they're not allowed to kill certain animals out of season because, if that, I forget which season it was, but they were up in, I think they were up in the Yukon because they were allowed to kill bear, but they couldn't take some of the other animals. And I was
and
just
they're
like,
seeing them too, right?
Exactly. And that was unfair. Just, just the kiss of death. But it does go to show you how much the body needs fat.
Yeah.
Right.
Huge lesson in that. Huge lesson there.
We need a balanced lifestyle, and those fat-free diets are really not great for us. So
yeah, it's interesting to watch how, if you think you've got these 3 major macronutrients, you've got your carbohydrates, you've got your fats, lipids, you've got your protein, and to watch how we constantly cycle fad diets where it's like, oh no, only one is good for you or one is bad for you and you can only eat the other 2. And we just seem to like cycle through that. So I've seen all of them become the villain. I mean, I started paying attention to nutrition and fat was the villain, and then protein became the villain. And right now carbs are the villain. My wife wants to make a t-shirt that says, I believe in carbs. So
as do I. The just being older, there's only one thing that works: a balanced diet with a reduction in calories and exercise. I mean, that is the holy grail, and it's so simple. It's
not a sexy book title.
No, it isn't. It's a 1-page book. Reduce your total intake, maintain the proper balance of fats, carbs, and proteins, eat as much salad as you want. I mean, go for it, but exercise is the key, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. Andrew, how many seasons of TV have you done? I read today something like 30, and I was like, is that possible? Have you done that many?
Uh, well, if you add up a whole bunch of different shows, it's probably actually more than that. But some
Wow.
of them have been simultaneous. I'll give you an example. Uh, this last year, I shot a season of Family Dinner, 2 seasons of Wild Game Kitchen, and a season of Iron Chef on Netflix.
Wow.
So, you got to sort of read between the lines. So that's in 1 year, I shot 4 seasons of TV shows,
Wow.
right? So
How
you're
are you
always
doing that?
ahead because some of them are a season of Iron Chef was shot in 12 days,
Okay.
14
Okay.
days.
Yeah.
So it's a season is different than what they'll put on per year
Yeah, of
on a
course. Yeah.
streamer or a linear network. I'm always sort of aghast when I look at the total list of my shows. Bizarre Foods on travel channels spawned a lot of different shows, but I count them all as the same show. I'm the same. I'm not portraying a role. I'm doing the same thing in Delicious Destinations, Bizarre World, Bizarre Foods America, Bizarre Foods. I mean, it's all the same show. Zimmern List on Travel Channel, which was the Emmy winner, was a half hour, and that was a different show, as was Food Truck Tip on Food Network and All-Star Academy on Food Network. MSNBC did What's Eating America. And then there's Family Dinner, Iron Chef, and Wild Game Kitchen. I'm sure I'm forgetting a show or two in there, but that's basically the roster.
What's it been like over the years? Your career on TV must have taken place as there were tremendous changes both in food culture in the United States, also in food TV. The general food IQ of the average American must have come up dramatically in the time that you've been doing this. So I'm kind of curious about what you've seen and kind
It's
of
all
like,
changed.
yeah,
Everything has
where's it
changed
headed? What have you seen? Where's it
drastically.
headed?
I mean, we were Bizarre Foods premiered in early 2007. So we were making the pilot in 2005. Previous to that, I'd spent 5-6 years in local and national television. I was the features reporter on the local network. I was doing their morning show. I was doing an HGTV show that was shot here I was in every other episode, every third episode is sort of like the house chef doing a food bit. Same thing on Rebecca's Garden, another syndicated show that I was doing a food bit on. And so I've basically been making television since 2000.
Wow.
And to say that things have changed is the understatement of the century. I mean, that's a generation. What's a generation? 25 years? Is that what
Yeah,
they
I see different
call it
things,
now?
but let's go with that. That works.
All right. So let's just say split the difference and say I've been making between the start of my career and now, it's been a full generation. The audience is way smarter. Networks don't give the audience enough credit.
Oh, it's brutal.
Networks always want to dumb everything down. We have our biggest conversations with our clients, as the owner of a production company and as talent on a lot of shows. And sometimes I'm just talent on someone else's show with someone else's network relationship. Everything, people want things hyper explained, they want or over explained. It's not quite back to the 90s where people are like, well, we need to show your hand on the door and opening it because otherwise how'd you get in the room? It's like, I think the audience, I had a director on a set actually make me do that. And my comment to them was, I think the audience is smart enough to know when they see me walking down whatever the street that I get into the room, we can use a different transition than the one that they've been using since the 50s, which is my hand turning a knob. Like I walked into the room, right? We can use an establishing shot from the outside. We can do it with 1,000 different ways. but I digress. Yes, it is. The audience has gotten way smarter. Food IQ is way smarter. There are times where that is a complete pain in the butt. Mostly it's great. There's something that's still difficult for a lot of on-camera talent to handle, not just myself, when we are eating a bowl of ramen in a restaurant in New York. And we use a term for an ingredient that restaurant calls calls out on their menu, or is just what they determine it. And then someone, Twitter or social media is just one big gotcha cesspool, right? So,
Right.
That's not, pork bone broth, right? That is a katsu ramen. And I'm like, well, actually, katsu ramen refers to the dish, let's say, in Japan, but the restaurant refers, you've got to call it what they ask it to be called, right? You can argue with them. So there's a lot of that gotcha stuff.
Sure.
Generically speaking, human beings have always been smart enough to handle everything that we've thrown at them. But to sort of underline your point a little more, we're recording this in February of 2023. At no point in human history has any culture been so food obsessed, romantically food obsessed, or food savvy as Americans are at this point in time. It's amazing. And
that's an interesting observation. Could you kind of qualify that a little bit? I'm curious to hear more.
Well, sure. As a cultural tentpole, I mean, there's the actual knowledge side, right? We're bombarded by it. We went through COVID. Everyone started cooking and baking more.
Yeah.
20 years ago on TV, you could call, if I said pho, everybody knew that I was talking about who liked food, but they didn't necessarily know that I was talking about a Vietnamese noodle soup. And now when you say it, now do they know, but you'll get 800 angry tweets saying it's pronounced pho.
Right.
And I'm like, yep, that's how it's pronounced in Vietnamese. And that's the big argument today. That's how smart people are. I mean, the Dutch painter with one ear, is he Van Gogh or Van Gogh? Right.
Right.
If you're speaking Dutch, it's Van Gogh, right? But on a personal level, I find it kind of odd when I'm talking to a friend of mine and I'm like, they say, "Oh, we just got back from a family trip to China," and I said, "Oh, where did you go?" And they were like, "Well, we spent a couple days in Shanghai." And then it just is a weird,
Right.
it's a weird thing. There's an over pronunciation. Everybody wants to be so culturally and politically correct about it.
It's a
It's
minefield
okay.
out there.
It is. And no one knows if there's any right or wrong. But getting back to your question, from a historical, cultural, and anthropological standpoint, we are food obsessed in this country. Now, what's shocking is that at the same time, we've never had more people hungry. Food has never been more of a class issue than it is today in America in the 21st century. Eating well has never been more of a class issue. So the distance between haves and have-nots is obviously increasing, every single day, which is horrific. I wish there was something that we could do to hasten the correction of that problem, and I work tirelessly for it. It's very frustrating. It's very hard, and hopefully we're able to make a bigger change. But yeah, we're obsessed. There's more newsletters. There's more. I mean, go on Instagram, go on TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
Look at what's big. It doesn't matter what age group. It doesn't matter who. People have said to me, "Well, we have fewer food magazines and fewer food sections in newspapers." And I'm like, you add up all the magazines and all the newspapers and all the written media columns for the entire decade of the 90s, right? Before the advent, let's just go pre Gen 1 smartphone and all that kind of stuff, right? And it doesn't equal what the food output is in one day on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter added up.
So something I have come across over the years, and it's hard to validate this, but something I've read is that at times where civilizations reach their peak and then start to enter their kind of catastrophic decline, it's very common for chefs to become celebrities and food to be fetishized, because one of the things that's sort of indicative of one of those cultural collapses is when you have that really, really dramatic classism that you're talking about. So you get a class
and lotus eater syndrome. It happened. Lotus eater syndrome. I'm not
familiar.
Coined that myself.
Okay.
People who are lotus eaters, it's a reference to Greek mythology. The lotus eaters were the people who did everything for pleasure.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And so you find this. I'm agreeing with you. We fetishize it. We obsess about it. And whether or not this is the collapse of modern Western culture, if we're living in it right now, in the history books, a couple of 100 years from now, we're going to point that out. I'm not sure. There have been lots of downturns. Is it possible for the ancient, Athenian city-state, the Roman Empire, the Mongol Empire, etc., to implode and go away forever? The Aztecs, the Maya. You can add them all to the list, right?
So many, right? Yeah.
Was that related to something that's going on here and indicative of where we're going? Or in the 21st century, is it harder to eliminate a culture? Are other cultures going to have similar problems? In other words, is the existential issue of weather crisis that we're enduring going to be the defining element that dooms everyone? Or is it our cultural vibe in the West, where we're essentially a convenience and speed culture that prioritizes the haves over the have-nots? I love my country. I love humanity, probably as much. But I love America. I love everything that's done for me and my family. And I think we have a lot of problems in this country. But what did Churchill say? Democracy is a lousy form of government, but it's a lot better than all the other ones. The jury is still out for me about where we're sort of headed with that. I know that the inequalities and social injustices that my parents fought really hard in the 60s and 70s to take care of, eliminate, are no back, but even more profoundly affecting all of us as citizens of the world, and in many cases disproportionately people of color and women. And I separate the two because the Clean Water Act, other things that the 45th president eliminated that we're struggling to deal with right now, affect everyone. And then there are other issues that disproportionately, like hunger, disproportionately affects people of color and women.
Your work, I guess something I didn't realize, I was just, sort of doing some research today, digging a little bit deeper, because I was familiar with your shows, but I didn't understand the degree to which these kind of social issues have been sort of foundational to your work. So maybe you could dig into that a little bit. Like, how long has that been part of the story for you? Obviously, food has been the vehicle through which you've kind of communicated about a lot of these types of issues. But it seems like outside of your TV shows, you do a lot of work on these kind of things too. We'll get right back to the show in a moment, but first, I'm proud and excited to share that WildFed Season 3 is now airing on Outdoor Channel Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Eastern as part of their Taste of the Wild block. This is our biggest and best season yet, with adventures ranging from coastal Maine all the way to tropical Hawaii. You'll see familiar faces and meet new friends that are dedicated to the pursuit of wild foods. Come along with me for prairie dog hunting in the Dakotas, the iconic alewife run in Maine, gathering and feasting with the foraging world's most renowned expert Sam Thayer, invasive species hunting on the rugged island of Molokai, and my wife Avani's first hunt too. If you don't have access to the Outdoor Channel on cable, you can watch it live right along with us on Friendly TV. That's FRNDLY TV.com. They have a 7-day free trial, and the monthly cost is just $6.99 a month. We can't wait to share all these new stories with you. Thank you so much for your incredible support. Now, back to the show.
I do, and I always have. The difference now is that I'm louder and
Yeah.
don't give a fuck about what people think, because I'm not a wealthy person, but I'm content, and I'm 61. I still have, a lifetime left of career. I feel like I am just getting started. Even though old white guys are not Hollywood is not screaming for them right now. I believe in also taking a step back and elevating others who've not had a seat at the table, literally and figuratively. And we're doing that very actively at my production company and in everything that we do. I'm not worried about not having a career. I'll always be doing something somewhere, right? But I'm definitely noisier and more effective now, because I've reached that age where I don't have to care about whether or not someone says, "Oh, Zimmern keeps talking about hunger and calls it hunger instead of food insecurity," or he's constantly griping, bringing up, existential climate crisis, or he cares too much about Africa and not enough about people here at home in America. Well, I do, and I do all those things for whole varieties of reasons and always have. And I think a lot of people don't, because they are too afraid that the animal, who they're suckling on for a career is going to dispose of them and kick them away, and they'll shrivel and die. There's younger people who've come up behind me who are so attached to an entity. I'm intelligent, so I'll just say a network, right? That they won't speak out. They won't use their platform for anything other than something that is safely endorsed by the entity, the media company, the magazine, whatever it is that they're related to. I feel really bad for them. I've always been this way, but I've been where those people are at. So when I sold Bizarre Foods, I sold a Trojan horse into the network. Yeah. I knew exactly what I was doing with Bizarre Foods. I wanted to make a show about preaching patience, tolerance, and understanding in a world where everyone had none of that for the other people, where we were defining ourselves by our differences instead of our commonalities. The network wanted a frothy show with a fun hook. Oh, watch him eat the putrid bug, right? Now, I accepted that, and from a strategic sort of career move, I knew exactly what I was doing. I had studied TV keenly, and I think any listener out there will relate to this. I don't know, one of the more popular shows on TV right now is Yellowstone, right? If you look at season 1 of Yellowstone, Kevin Costner is not an executive producer on the series, but year 2 he sure is, right? if you look at a lot of movies today with the financing issues with big stars, 20 years ago, big stars were not executive producers on movies, but they all are. Just look at, Ryan Reynolds, or The Rock or whoever. They all have their own production companies, and they all insist on those companies at least getting a production credit. It's all about positioning, and it's all about what the market will bear, right? But it also says a lot about the power of celebrity, especially in television, where in year one, even someone like Kevin Costner isn't an EP on the series, but the minute it's a hit, the show can't exist without Kevin Costner. Right. So how do you make Kevin Costner happy? You give him an EP credit. So if the show goes into syndication, which Yellowstone definitely will, not only does he get dollars as a performer once the show goes into syndication, but he'll get dollars as an executive producer. Make sense? Mm-hmm. When I started out my career, I was a nobody. I had absolutely no leverage. Well, I wasn't nobody, but I had no leverage with the network at all. The second year of Bizarre Foods, I think I was given a production credit, but not an executive producer credit. The third year of Bizarre Foods, I became an EP, and even though in season 1 and 2 they were relying on me to pick the locations and the stories, season 3 it contractually allowed me that everything sort of went through across my desk. And the production company, which was not mine, who was my partner in the show, knew that if I'm excited, the scene is better, right? And more so than the researchers and the writers, I knew where we should go and what we should be doing. It's the same for anyone in television, unless you're a hired actor who's just hosting a show, right? Mm-hmm. Pat Sajak does not make up the clues on Wheel of Fortune. Neither does Vanna. The writers do. Yeah. Right? They are paid hosts. But whether it's Mariana Van Zeller or me or Tony when he was making TV, or Stanley Tucci when he was making the Italy show for CNN, they're obviously relying on the talent, because the talent also happens to be the most expert person in the room. Now, as getting back to your original question, as Bizarre Foods and my other shows and all my other stuff became more popular, the network had to lean more and more. You become a tentpole of the network. You're making more money for the network. The network gives you more say in what you're doing, right? Yeah. So that's great. So that meant that my platform grew, and I had counted on that, because I had always studied this piece of TV history, that as the show progressed, the leverage wheel to begin with is at the network. Then if the show is a hit, the production company has more say. And then if it's a big hit, the talent begins to have more say. And I said, all I have to do is, do everything I can to make this show as a hit. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? It just means it has a chance of happening. It did happen. I was very lucky. There's no explaining it. It is something for which I'm incredibly grateful, because it's meant I've gotten to have a very large impact on the issues that I see as being important in the world. So once I had that platform, what am I going to do with it? Well, I started working in Washington, D.C. with different NGOs and nonprofits and lobbying groups that are there. I started to sit on boards. I became I'm the United Nations World Food Program Global Ambassador for food waste. I'm the International Rescue wow. Committee's Global Ambassador for nutrition. I'm the global ambassador for the Nature Conservancy. Those are really big organizations. Global reach, operating in 100+ countries, blah, 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 blah. And it has been one of the great pleasures of my life. This last year, I was invited to the White House Conference on Hunger, Health, and Nutrition, which was, first time in 50 years that any president has held that. The last time it happened was 51 years ago. And, food represents, 20% of GDP. It's a shocking number. But it's certainly working on public policy and stuff like that for 15 years, 16 years has allowed me to go into a lot of places and do a lot of things. I was able to work with the One organization and, convince a couple of senators, a Democrat and a Republican, to pull the Electrify Africa Act out of the omnibus bill that it was trapped in and get it into its own separate piece of legislation so that we could help get Africans more electricity. The reason being that we're giving billions of dollars in food and medical aid to parts of that continent, but without electricity, they can't refrigerate it or transport it properly.
Yeah.
Right. In cooled trucks. And so it's so important if we want to fix these problems, that if you are a leader in your community, that could be your apartment building or your block or your school or your group of friends, you do something about it. If you're a leader in your group of friends and you're listening to this and you believe in some of these issues, go to andrewzimmern.com, go to my partners page, and copy and paste that page into an email and send it to all your friends. Those are all the nonprofits and the places that I work with. Spread awareness. We don't all need to give money. We don't all need to volunteer. We're not all situated to do any of that stuff, but we all can spread awareness, right? And then for someone like me, I'm so blessed. The platform that I've been given is big. And so if I'm not doing something big with it, that's a problem. I look at other people who have a big platform who aren't doing something for good. And I really wonder what their deal is.
Well, that's actually a follow-up question I have, because, of what you said before about sometimes talent fearing the network or the media company that they work for, something like that, and therefore not speaking up about issues. Because I think that the public's kind of arrived at this place where they think most of the talent out there is sort of empty-headed and vapid and maybe lacking any kind of profundity or depth to even care.
Couldn't be further from the truth. They're scared.
Yeah, that's it. That's interesting.
Couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, look, and I'll just speak about a story that has come full circle. The harassment of women over at Fox News, right? Okay. You had, I think, 2 or 3 women sued, a whole bunch left. It was documented in that wonderful movie with Charlize Theron that she actually helped produce. That story, for better or worse, doesn't matter who you agree with, is sort of like, some events happened, Fox got sued, some women were fired. Like, people have taken risks and, lost careers. So a lot of people look at that and they're early on in their career, or they don't have leverage at the company they're with. And by the way, that could be someone at the insurance agency, right? Who's like, hey, this is why, I don't want to, all of a sudden catastrophize things, but if you go all the way up from someone who's just trying to change whether or not a company recycles in the rec room or break room, or whether it's about whistleblowing at a much higher level, there is a corporate power identity issue at play here more than anything else. Talent's not vapid. Employees are not unaware. It's just that they're trying to put food on their kids' table and they don't want to take the risk of jeopardizing that.
One thing I'm starting to wonder, just hearing from you, is I'm going to try to walk this tightrope of asking this question, but I'm sort of curious what finds you, how you find yourself at Outdoor Channel, for a couple of reasons, of course. One is that, it seems like you could kind of go anywhere with your brand.
No tightrope.
Well,
to walk.
it just seems like
I know where you're going with this, so you should go ahead and
well,
call
it's
it
a
out.
couple things. I mean, one, I'm there. I'm working on my fourth season for them, and it's a small network. So that's one piece. But also, I see the ads that come on during the commercials, and it's like this demographic is not usually very aligned with the kind of things you're talking about. So talk to me about sort of why, because it's not like you don't have other opportunities, and it seems like you have so much going on, and yet here you are amongst this like a good old boy audience in a lot of ways. It's, they advertise a lot of ATVs and things like that.
Firearms.
Yeah, firearms, beef jerky, all those kind of things. And so I see you cooking game there, but I was kind of surprised, actually. It was like, oh, it's not where I would imagine you to be. So what's the story?
So you would classify that as a more, I'm just going to just generalize, a more right-leaning, more red-leaning audience.
Yeah, a little more Appalachian, a little more conservative. Yeah, absolutely.
I would.
Yeah,
right.
I would. I'm gonna be careful, but
yeah, more conservative. No, absolutely. I think anyone with half a brain would say that my viewers on MSNBC for content that I've made there are very far to the left. They're
not watching out. They don't even have Outdoor Channel in their cable package. So
don't even know it exists. Right.
If they did, they would be very much unhappy that it's there.
Okay. So, I mean, and those are generalities, right? Because we do know there are some people who watch MSNBC and Outdoor Channel, but for the main, we know that MSNBC leans left, and we know that Outdoor Channel is more conservative and probably leans right. Okay. So I'm more concerned career-wise in being the only, not necessarily the best. So I was approached by Outdoor Channel to do a dump and stir show, an in the kitchen show. And I leapt at the chance. Number one, people generalize about left-wing socialist utopians like myself, right? And by the way, I don't bring my political views onto the Outdoor Channel.
No, you would never know. You would never know watching.
But I've been hunting and fishing since I was a kid.
The frames of your glasses are a little deceiving, though. I will say, I'm like, I don't see a lot of glasses like that out in the field very often.
Someone else pointed out the watch, but I'll go with glass.
I paused multiple times today to try to get the watch brand, but the clarity wasn't. I couldn't quite get it.
It's one that most people don't go out and stick pigs with. But here's the deal. If you're doing a show about outdoor cooking, I want to do it for people who actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that other networks, even the culinary ones, the ones where you see a lot of lifestyle television, unscripted, care about that audience. And I care very much about that audience, right? Because I'm one of those people. And I thought to myself long and hard about it. And I said, you know something? There is a percentage of that audience who watches me on Outdoor Channel that has no idea what my politics are or my civic views. And they also don't care. Mm-hmm. They're coming to me because they're like, oh, I that guy's funny. I want to see, that's an interesting way to cook salmon, right? There are other people there who see me on and are like, okay, I've heard that guy before. He has a different cup of tea he's sipping at civically. But gee, I kind of like him. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching him. And maybe in a little small way, I can move the needle on opening up an avenue of communication between the traditional Outdoor Channel viewer and myself. Because Americans inhale other cultures and ideas through their mouths first.
Well said.
Everybody loves Mexican food. I mean, I don't think I've ever met anybody who said, I don't like Mexican food.
It's universal, yeah.
But if you watch the news or listen to anyone talk or even listen to candidates that are running for public office, there are some people who do not like Mexican people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's ridiculous. I mean, the people come before the food. They create the culture.
Yeah.
They create the food. It is, there's a lot of people who are anti-immigrant, just in capital letters. I mean, it's just an anti-immigrant stance. And these are American firsters. And yes, that's completely at the extreme. It's a very small percentage at the far right of our political spectrum. But, I'd like to think that if I'm appearing in enough places and I say over and over again, every piece of food that's eaten in America, every piece of food eaten in America is touched by the hands of an immigrant. Some of those people I may be able to bring a little bit towards the middle on that issue. And they will help bring about immigration reform that, by the way, we all need. That's not red or blue or left or right. That's forward. As many, red and blue presidents over the last 40 years have kicked that can down the road. It is an existential issue for us because it goes hand in hand with our climate crisis. We need to move people around globally, not just in this country, but move people around to, plant, pick, harvest, ship, and cook the food that's going to feed a planet that's growing like crazy, that has an insane climate crisis going on. So I would rather be a voice that people get used to on Outdoor Channel, first and foremost, because I'm an Outdoor Channel person. I love to hunt and fish. I watch the network, right?
There's not a lot of other places to go.
There aren't.
They're kind of the holdout.
And so I was thrilled. And, to be able to show people a different side of myself. Could I have gone to Food Network and pitched a dump and stir show, making, fun family recipe or whatever niche they didn't have there? Sure. I probably could have done that. Right. And if not them, someone else would have bought it, because Thank You was very complimentary, but you're accurate. I have options, when it comes to these types of things. But I said yes almost immediately. I mean, I think it took me about an hour to say yes to Outdoor Channel when they approached me with this idea. It was essentially immediate, because I would rather be cooking that kind of food to an audience where almost 100% of them are going to listen and be engaged with it than be on a network where maybe 20%, 25% are going to listen. I mean, look, if I'm doing a cupcake show on the Food Network, 75% of their audience tunes out. They're not into cupcakes.
Right.
And that's just, there are a lot of eyeballs there. Some people don't like to bake. It's not a knock. It's just that 25% that likes the cupcake shows is a big number. But at Outdoor Channel, I have an opportunity to get 100% of their audience, and 100% of that audience gets active on what they're seeing. If they see a new fishing rod or reel or new scope setup or something like that, and they like to fish or hunt, they're going to write that down, go to the website, check it out, put it on their Christmas list, buy it right away if they're so disposed. So I know when I'm cooking something on the Outdoor Channel that the audience is paying attention. I also was sick and tired of seeing wild foods mishandled on so many different shows. Uh-huh. Now, there are some amazing people doing cool things on the Outdoor Channel. But for the most part, people in their own lives are still taking their pheasant, plucking them, maybe just breasting them out, God forbid, but, and throwing them all in the freezer. And then they'll take it frozen and put it on a low setting with a couple cans of cream and mushroom soup in the crock pot and put it on at 7 a.m. and come home at 5, 6 o'clock in the evening and eat dinner. Now,
hey, some use Italian dressing. Don't.
That's right. That's right. If that is a comfort food for you, if that is something that that you enjoy. I don't believe in yucking on someone's yum. I mean, that's your thing. Go for it, right? It's fantastic. However, I do want to show people, because everyone I've ever hunted pheasant with, and I mean everyone, not and I've been pheasant hunting for 30 years. Everyone that I go pheasant hunting with, when we go back to the cabin or someone's house or whatever, and they see me pan frying pheasant breasts to just past medium rare and making a little pan sauce, maybe with just some mushrooms and shallots and a little bit of sherry and cream, and just slicing the meat and drizzling the sauce over the top. Something really simple, 5 ingredients, and taking the dark quarters and putting them in the oven at 200 degrees, 250 degrees, maybe with some red wine and vegetables for 7 or 8 hours, going low and slow. And then we have that for lunch the next day if we're at bird camp or something. Again, 7 or 8 ingredients. They're just stunned. They're stunned. I said, well, it's just with the pheasant dark quarters, it's, you know, a little fresh thyme, celery, carrot, onion, some red wine, some butter. That's it. I mean, it's 6 ingredients. And they can't believe what's coming out of there. Now, if I added 3 or 4 more ingredients and changed the plating a little bit, it's worthy of a 2-star Michelin restaurant.
Right.
But anyone can brown their pheasant dark quarters, throw them in a pan, deglaze it with some red wine, throw in a couple garlic cloves, some sprigs of thyme, celery, carrot, onion, and cook it low and slow in the oven. Pull the legs out after 7 or 8 hours and reduce that sauce to a glaze and pour the whole thing all over itself. That's easy. That's easy cooking. And the fact of the matter is that I know there are people out there, because I'm going to tie this idea to something you said 20 minutes ago. You said people are smarter about food, that they know more about food. So I believe there's a huge piece of that outdoor channel audience that likes to cook that says, you know something? I had duck at this restaurant the other night. It was amazing. So there's got to be other ways to do my duck than overcooking it, you know, in some casserole situation, right? I'm really excited for people to see season 3, which is going to come out later on in the spring. Mostly because there's one recipe I make where I took a goose and I put it on it basically, you know, cooked it sitting upright the way that you would do chicken in a can. But I just put it on a vertical roaster, which is a $8 item you can get on Amazon, or any supermarket even carries it. And, you know, their little mini cooking section, right? And I put it in the middle of a fire pit with the coals about 7-8 feet away on all sides, and just let it go low and slow until it was brown and crispy on the outside, poked holes in it, rendered all its fat, brushed the outside with 5-spice blend.
The can of the goose?
Basted it with, you know, honey and wine, and it just caramelizes right up. And then I just sliced it and served it with little homemade tortilla instead of Chinese Peking duck pancakes, and hoisin sauce instead of sweet bean paste, because everyone loves Peking duck and Peking style goose, right? And restaurants in China, there are actually more Peking style goose restaurants than duck restaurants. That's a subject for another day. But I wanted to show people how easy it is to have what would cost $120 to eat in a restaurant. And for goose hunters or duck hunters, because you can do the same recipe with either one. By the way, home cooks can do it with a goose or a duck that's in the freezer section at their grocery store as well. Right. You don't need to be a hunter. That's the other good thing about Wild Game Kitchen. All of our recipes are designed to be transferable. You don't need wild product for it. But to show people that, yes, you can even do something like that. You know, I started out seasons 1 and 2 doing stuff that's very simple. I did a thing with quail. You can do it with dove or any small bird, but I marinated in, you know, sake and mirin and soy sauce and grilled it to medium rare and put it on top of a thin vermicelli noodle salad, and did it with lots of mint and cilantro, sort of a Thai or Vietnamese style dish with a vinaigrette that's made with the same herbs and a little fish sauce and sugar and sesame oil. And everyone now is food smart. Everyone's gone out and eaten that dish and just loved it. But it's so easy to do at home. And if you're a hunter or you live any kind of outdoors lifestyle, even if it's one day a year you go hunt or fish or both, you're able to take that product back and do something really, really great with it that's simple and easy, but doesn't involve a crock pot.
Let me ask you this question, going back to something you said earlier. Thank you, by the way, for those recipe tips.
They're all at andrewzimmern.com.
And the episodes are available online too, which is great, and they're very digestible. No pun intended. So you'd mentioned earlier like a leftist social utopia, and I'm curious about how you see, because it's such a dichotomy we have, mentally going in the United States right now. But how do you see hunting and fishing coexisting with that kind of leftist social utopia, the socialist utopia that you mentioned? Because obviously, that people in the hunting fishing world, generally speaking, tend to see like that whole world as an existential threat to that lifestyle, which obviously doesn't need to be, but that is the concern, that all of those things will be eroded away, because typically people who share those values are not very interested in the idea of people going out and harvesting wild animals. I mean, it's just like shocking to the sensibilities of many people. So how do you reconcile that, obviously having a foot in those two kind of worlds that you do?
Oh, I mean, very easily. I mean,
not how do you reconcile it, but how do you think the world will reconcile it?
The people who are the greatest protectors. I mean, this is what's so crazy. When you talk about trying to solve some of these big existential issues, we need to enroll everyone in helping to come up with solutions that are lasting, right? Mm-hmm. So the same people that are chaining themselves to trees so that tractors don't push them down have the same, I talk to them, they have the same value set and the same goal as the members of Pheasants Forever and Deers Forever and Ducks Forever, and same goals.
Yeah.
I tell people who chain themselves to trees, I said, do you know who are the best protectors of our wild green spaces? More so even than some of the people chaining themselves to trees are people who hunt and fish. They give money every single year. It doesn't matter. They give money they don't even have to those organizations because they know how important our wild spaces are, right? And so with so much, it's a Venn diagram that's like two overlapping circles. You see how much you share. I think human beings, I mean, this is what I preached in Bizarre Foods. We have way more in common than we do things that separate us. And if we could just align ourselves, forget about what anybody thinks about gay marriage, right? I mean, let's just forget. It doesn't mean it's not an important issue, right? I happen to think I think marriage equality is a very important issue. But if I had to prioritize, if I had a gun to my head, and this is coming from the son of two gay men, if I had to prioritize, I would want to solve our climate crisis first and foremost, right? So all of us are affected by that. Let's start working together on that. And then along the way, look, are the 5% of people on the far left and the 5% of the people on the far right ever going to join the discussion in the middle? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I've spoken to people on both sides of that spectrum. Intractable, not moving an inch. Then there's 50% in the middle, right? Left and right. Then you've got the other 40% that sort of sit, on the, they're inside slot receivers, right? Super Bowl weekend just passed us, right? If we can just get those people to just cock their heads a little bit towards the quarterback and recognize that the people on the other side of their own team want the same things in the world, we stand for the same stuff, I think we would go a long, long way. I mean, look, when COVID hit, I co-founded an organization called the Independent Restaurant Coalition. We tried to help restaurants affected by COVID-19, and we helped pass a lot of laws on Capitol Hill. One of the things that we're proudest of was fixing PPP. That was not left or right. That was not red or blue. That was about helping small business people all across the country. And what I meant by fix it was, when people forget, when PPP came out, you had to be an open business to use it. Well, that's no good if you own a theater, a movie theater, or a restaurant on Main Street, right? Doesn't matter what your politics or civics are, right? There's many people of all belief systems that own food businesses, but states had to shut them down because there were places where the public was gathering. Didn't matter whether you were in a blue state or a red state or a purple state, right? So we had to fix that. And who did we go to help fix it? We went to Chip Roy, Republican of Texas, and Dean Phillips, my congressman here in Minnesota. And they were both part of an organization on Capitol Hill that believed in talking to the other side. And the two of them got the PPP fix done. And it's one of the great examples of what happens when you work together. Chip Roy and Dean Phillips do not agree on 99% of the stuff that's out there, but they talk every day.
Yeah.
And it's talking and being with each other. My neighbors may not agree with my politics. It doesn't matter. Our kids go to the same school. We shop at the same stores. We live in the same space. If we're not talking with each other, we are making a huge mistake. We also have to assume the best in each other. And again, I want to stress this. It doesn't matter where you sit. On the far ends of the spectrum are always people who are they're called extremists because they have extremist ideas. And it doesn't matter whether, I mean, and that's in our country too, right? We always use that word when it applies to someone else. We have extremists in our country, right? Mm-hmm. I am convinced that the vast majority of conservatives that live in Michigan were horrified that people tried to assassinate the governor of that state because of her views. By the way, a duly elected governor who won quite handily. There's other ways that you change laws and policies without taking extreme measures. I assume the best in my fellow man, and I assume that there's lots of people who think differently about ideas, who have enough in common with me that we can break bread together and solve a problem. My friend Jose Andres always says we need longer tables, we don't need taller walls. Yeah. And it's the same thing that I was saying in Bizarre Foods when we started making the show almost 20 years ago. We need to find things that we have in common and work on those things together. And along the way, we will find out that we have a lot more in common. And at that point, we can start to solve some of our issues. And the best way to do it is by looking at things through food. So when you ask why, just like my plans with Bizarre Food, Wild Game Kitchen for me was cooking for the audience that I actually want to cook for. They're my people too.
It's an awesome message. I really appreciate it. It's unusual to hear today. Andrew, I know you've got somewhere you need to be, so I just want to say thank you so much for your time today and give you a spot just to let people know where they can go to get more of your stuff.
Everything is at andrewzimmern.com. You can link to my Substack there, all the info about all the different things I do. If you love to cook, my spice blends are there. Everything is on the nav bar on the top. One click and you have everything that you need at andrewzimmern.com.
Andrew, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the WildFed podcast. You can help us grow this show by subscribing and leaving us a rating and review. It ensures better rankings and more advertiser interest, which translates directly into better shows, more awesome guests, and a constant stream of fresh new content. Have a podcast guest or topic suggestion, or maybe a hunting, fishing, or foraging trip you'd like to host the WildFed TV show for? email us at info@wild-fed.com. If you still haven't seen season 1 or 2 of the WildFed TV show, go to myoutdoortv.com, grab yourself a free trial subscription, and then check out all 20 episodes. Season 3 of WildFed premieres on Outdoor Channel in early 2023. And be sure to visit our website, wild-fed.com, to check out our store for WildFed shirts, hoodies, hats, stickers, and more. WildFed. Food is all around you.